The movie opens with Brody, an airline pilot, strolling through the airport. Engaged in a video call with his daughter, he reassures her that he'll finish his duties and visit her soon, eliciting her joy. Brody enters the cockpit, where he meets his co-pilot. Shortly after, an officer urgently calls him, revealing an emergency. Brody is tasked with accompanying Louis, a formidable and perilous individual. The officer expresses confidence in Brody's judgment, and he accepts the responsibility. He interacts with the rest of the crew, discussing whether all the passengers have boarded the plane. Once everyone is on board and seated, they promptly take off. Brody expresses his deep affection for his daughter to his fellow pilot, emphasizing their strong bond. They rely on each other as they continue their journey on the plane throughout the night. As the weather worsens, Brody's unease grows. Despite feeling unwell, he instructs passengers to fasten their seatbelts. Desperate to communicate with the control center, he tries the radio repeatedly, but connectivity remains elusive. As the radios gradually cease to function, a sudden jolt of electricity surges through the plane, causing it to start moving. Brody grows increasingly concerned and checks on the passengers, relieved to find them unharmed. The lights begin to dim slowly. Suddenly, the plane is struck again, causing Brody to fall and sustain a head injury. These circumstances leave all the passengers in a distressed state. Returning to the cabin, Brody and his companion struggle to maintain control of the plane amid the challenges of a malfunctioning radio and an obscured screen. Realizing the imminent danger of another shock, Brody decides they must bring the plane down to avert its destruction. They immediately commence the descent, instilling fear in the passengers. One woman unbuckles her seatbelt, prompting the officer accompanying Louis to do the same. As the plane plummets, a forceful impact from above results in their immediate demise. The plane experiences a sudden descent, prompting Brody and his companion to swiftly regain control. The air hostess informs Brody about the passenger's state, urging him to manage them and ensure they remain seated. They are soon to land at a nearby airport. As they observe their surroundings, they realize they are flying over an island. If there are no other options available, they decide to make an emergency landing on the island. They spot a suitable location and successfully land the plane, albeit under emergency circumstances. Brody and his companion feel relieved when they discover some residual electricity in the plane. Brody instructs everyone to disembark. Meanwhile, the owner of the plane company notices the sudden disappearance of the aircraft, as he did not witness the landing. The radio damage prevented him from establishing contact for an extended period, resulting in his growing unease. Brody, the air hostess, informs him that the officer who brought Louis has passed away. Despite feeling sad, Brody instructs her to take care of the other passengers. He then addresses everyone, explaining that the emergency landing was necessary due to a crisis. Although the plane has limited electricity, they'll work on restoring it. Passengers are assured of food, water, and accommodations while they wait. Meanwhile, the plane company's owner meets a rescue expert to gather information about the flight, its crew, and passengers. Brody begins fixing the plane, but the low power and malfunctioning radio cause delays. Brody confided in his co-pilot, who examined the map and revealed their predicament. They were stranded on a private island, controlled by a ruthless private army. The situation was dire because these armed individuals were dangerous. Brody realized that their only hope was to summon a rescue team. He addressed the passengers, explaining the radio malfunction and urging them to remain patient. Upon hearing this news, anxiety spreads among the passengers. Brody reassures them, explaining that they'll venture to the other side of the island to locate a functioning radio. Their team will then dispatch a rescue mission to save everyone. Brody releases Louis from his handcuffs, and they proceed. As they move forward, they encounter the menacing head of the private army. A man approaches the head, informing him about the emergency landing and the diverse group of passengers on the plane. The head accepts a bribe and instructs his team to prepare. Suspicious of the passengers' intentions, he fears they might leave the island. In the jungle, Brody and Louis continue their journey. Louis questions Brody's decision to set him free and demands to know their destination. Brody explains that he can't endanger everyone, especially with the dangerous private army present. Louis presses him with more inquiries. Suddenly, silence falls over the scene, and when Brody turns around, he realizes that Louis has vanished. Meanwhile, the rescue expert remains occupied, gathering information about the plane. In a video recording, he witnesses Brody engaging in a fierce fight with a passenger, displaying impressive combat skills that impress the rescue expert. Following this, the expert communicates with the leader of a private company, informing them to be prepared as their assistance may be required. The scene shifts to Brody, who ventures into an abandoned factory within the jungle. Inside, he discovers a malfunctioning radio apparatus, which he skillfully repairs and connects to a phone. He attempts to contact the helpline, sharing details about his plane and the island they are stranded on. Unfortunately, due to a line issue, the person on the other end cannot hear him. Brody devises a plan and instructs his daughter to write down the information, urging her to inform his office about the situation. Suddenly, an assailant attacks Brody, but he swiftly subdues the attacker, rendering him unconscious. Sensing a presence in the room, Brody quickly hides, only to discover that it is Louis who has entered. Louis had had defeated a group of thugs and acquired their weapons. He calls out to Brody, and upon Brody's emergence, he offers him some of the weapons. Subsequently, Brody and Louis begin descending from their current location. During their descent, they stumble upon a camera that reveals a shocking truth through the recorded footage. They learn that a perilous private army has been abducting arriving individuals and extorting large sums of money from their families in exchange for their release. Realizing the imminent danger faced by their passengers, Brody and Louis swiftly make their way to a nearby vehicle and set off toward the location where the passengers are located. As the passengers anxiously await Brody's arrival, they suddenly hear the sound of a car approaching. Filled with hope, they believe it to be Brody coming to their rescue. However, to their dismay, it turns out to be the dangerous private army instead. The armed group opens fire and advances menacingly towards the group of passengers, instigating chaos and fear. Brody and Louis, who had also heard the sound of gunfire, became aware of the grave situation unfolding before them. The leader of the private army demands the pilot provide the list containing the names of all the passengers. In response, the air hostess swiftly retrieves the list and hands it over to the leader. The leader then inquires about the whereabouts of the senior pilot, Brody. The air hostess explains that Brody had gone to the jungle for some unspecified task, but has not yet returned. Amidst the chaos, a woman attempts to escape from the scene, only to be ruthlessly shot and killed by the army members. Upon hearing the gunshot, Brody rushes towards the woman, driven by a desire to help her. However, Louis intervenes and prevents Brody from endangering himself further. The armed group proceeds to force all the passengers onto a bus, effectively holding them captive. The leader instructs two of his accomplices to board the plane and retrieve any valuable items. Once the task is complete, the leader himself escorts the passengers and departs from the location. Brody becomes furious with Louis, expressing his frustration that their people were taken away while he was prevented from intervening. Louis explains to Brody that the private army is formidable and dangerous, emphasizing that attempting to confront them alone would have been futile. Though both Brody and Louis are disheartened by the turn of events, they gather themselves and continue onwards. They manage to apprehend two of the goons who were pilfering valuable items from the plane. Under the threat of his gun, Brody interrogates the captured individuals, demanding to know where they intend to take the passengers. One of them reveals that there is an empty factory nearby, where the passengers might have been brought. Meanwhile, the rescue expert has been informed about the situation on the island by Brody's daughter. He learns that their plane is stranded there and that a dangerous private army is present. The expert promptly conveys this information to the owner of the airline company, who instructs him to send a private team and a rescue team immediately. The teams swiftly locate the island and the airplane. They formulate a plan where the leader of the private team will be the first to proceed to the island along with his team. Simultaneously, Brody and Louis make their way towards the factory in a car. Upon reaching the vicinity, they stealthily infiltrate the premises. Inside the factory, they discover private army goons capturing videos of the passengers, aiming to showcase their nationalities. As the private team approaches the plane, they find it deserted. The team leader investigates inside and discovers two lifeless bodies. Alongside, they find a message from Brody, revealing the route to the factory. Brody and Louis had been covertly observing the goons from the factory. They ambush two of them, silencing them effectively. Now they proceed toward a hidden door, emerging outside the room. Inside the room, the passengers were held captive, surrounded by numerous guards. Louis's anger flared, and he wielded a hammer, dispatching the guards one by one. Brody managed to obtain keys from a goon, freeing the passengers. Urgently, he instructed everyone to gather near the plane. Having called for help via the radio, Brody assured them that the rescue team was on its way. As they sat on the bus, Louis approached Brody, warning of more goons outside. Brody devised a plan to distract the guards and secure their escape. Brody instructed Louis to lead the passengers away from danger. As Brody confronted the goons, he informed their leader that his team was en route. The goons attacked Brody, refusing to let the passengers go without payment. Just as they were about to kill Brody, the private team arrived, engaging the goons in a fierce firefight. Many goons fell, and the private team secured Brody's safety. They hurriedly left on a bus. The good leader, witnessing the casualties, grew furious and ordered his team to eliminate everyone. Meanwhile, Brody conversed with the private team, who clarified that they weren't a rescue team, but had come to help. They emphasized that official rescue was still on its way. Feeling a sense of unease, Brody quickly reassures himself and the others, stating that he has an idea to overcome their predicament. They approach the airplane, where Louis has gathered all the passengers. Brody proceeds to inform his people that a private team has arrived to assist them, and together they will pilot the plane and depart immediately. Urging everyone to swiftly board the aircraft, Brody emphasizes that waiting for the rescue team is not feasible, as there is still time for their arrival, and remaining in the current location would put them at risk of being harmed by the dangerous army. Upon hearing Brody's words, all the passengers promptly take their seats on the plane. Brody, along with the leader of the private team, begins working on repairing the aircraft. However, the goons from the private army launch an attack on them. In response, the private team members engage the assailants, resulting in an intense exchange of gunfire. Due to their superior weaponry, the private team successfully eliminates a significant number of the goons. Brody assures the team leader that he will initiate the plane's takeoff within the next 5 minutes, expressing his gratitude to Lewis for his unwavering support. Despite the ongoing bullets, Brody fearlessly moves between the gunfire and takes his seat on the plane. Brody and his co-pilot took control of the plane. Lewis had exhausted his bullets. While searching the private team's bag, Lewis discovered a stash of money, but he left it for now. Armed with a gun from another bag, he engaged the goons. Meanwhile, Brody expertly maneuvered the plane. The private team also boarded, and the owner of the plane company informed Brody of a safe location. Passengers boarded, but Louis hesitated. He fled with the money, prompting an attack by the private army. Their leader aimed a rocket launcher at the plane, but Lewis intervened, shooting him down. With determination, Brody piloted the plane to safety, and Lewis escaped as well. The plane's owner informed Brody about a nearby airport where they could land. Brody steered the plane in that direction, but unfortunately, it suffered further damage, forcing an emergency landing. Once on the ground, they continued through the jungle, relieved that everyone survived. The plane company's owner and team shared their joy, and Brody and his co-pilot finally breathed a sigh of relief. They had escaped the island, and everyone was safe. Shortly afterward, the rescue team arrived, and the passengers rejoiced. Applause filled the air, honoring Brody's courage. He ensured that all passengers boarded with the rescue team. Then, he had a heartfelt conversation with his daughter, who expressed immense relief that her father was safe. Both daughters shared their joy, grateful that the story of Brody's bravery had a happy ending. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.